Good evening, Tigard. My name is Jason Snider. I am the mayor of Tigard, and we have 1 hour tonight and a lot of ground to cover. So please make sure that you are submitting your questions in the chat box to make sure that this is intended to be my monthly Fireside chat listening session done virtually. So that means me listening to what Tigard residents have to say and making sure that I can answer as many questions as I can and hear your feedback. So that's the intent of what we're doing tonight. What I do want to do is give you a few updates on what's happening in the city. First thing I want to make sure everyone's aware of is that it is time to vote. We have an election going on right now. I want to give you a couple reminders about that. The drop box at City Hall for ballots is open until 8 p.m. on voting day, which is Tuesday, May 19th. But even more convenient than that this year, ballot return envelopes no longer require you to put postage on them. So you can literally vote from the convenience of your home and not have to leave by just putting the ballot in your outgoing mail. As a reminder, we have a police levy on the ballot, and I would really encourage all Tigard voters to get really familiar with why we have that on the ballot, what we are planning to provide with the levy once it's approved. So please take the time to educate yourself and vote. Ballots must be mailed no later than May 13th to make sure that they're counted. So after May 13th, you do need to drop your ballot in a drop box to ensure it gets counted. If the levy passes, just as a reminder, these are the high-level things that the levy would cover. First, 8 additional patrol officers in the police department to increase neighborhood patrols and allow us to do more thorough follow-up. 1 additional school resource officer to address school safety. And then something that I think is particularly important is the advanced crisis intervention and conflict de-escalation training for all Tigard officers. We've been having serious trouble getting more than 1 or 2 officers through that training in a year because of how long the training is. Also, some changes that have been occurring with policing during the pandemic. We've been responding as a police department to a lot more disturbance calls. These range from domestic violence and threats to loud arguments. There's been a 31% increase in those types of calls compared to the same time last year. And then we've also had a number of crimes of opportunity, I would say, targeting closed businesses. And there's been a 60% increase in burglaries reported during the first half of April compared to the same time last year. That's unfortunate, and we are doing the best we can to proactively address that, but it remains a concern. I also want to remind folks that the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021 is now available online for review. And the Budget Committee meets in a couple of weeks. But before then, our Finance Director, Toby LaFrance, will be holding virtual office hours next week on both Tuesday and Wednesday. And that will give the community an opportunity to ask questions. You can provide input that way. You can also provide input directly to the Budget Committee. But it probably starts with conversations with our finance director about questions you may have. The last highlight I want to give you, an update, is that Washington County has been partnering throughout the entire county to provide a hub for essential needs right now. And we now have the hub in the Tigard area is being hosted by the Northwest Christian Church on Hall Boulevard. So I want to make sure that our community is aware of that as a resource, and they have a significant number of supplies and things that they can assist with. So make sure that you're aware of that resource if you do need assistance. And let's see what kinds of questions we have for today. I'm going to see if I can get them up on my iPad here. If we had any roll in yet. Let's see. Got a couple people watching. No questions yet. Please do send in your questions. I want to make sure that we can interact and provide you with the best answers and information that we have. So I'll go over a couple things while we're waiting for questions and hoping that we get some questions. One question is, will the city be reopening on May 15th? That's a question that's been asked by a number of community members. And May 15th is the date at which the governor has indicated that if a county is ready to reopen, and there's a number of standards that she has that a county must meet, that is the date during which a county could begin reopening if they meet all those requirements. I've seen drafts of those requirements. I think they're final now, and there are a lot of requirements. And in areas of the state where there have been a lot of COVID-19 cases, that's going to be very challenging to meet those immediately. Some of them require significant upstaffing for contact tracing at the county level. In Washington County alone, I believe that number is in the hundreds. It's not like 5 or 10, it's like hundreds, or at least 100. So there's significant planning and work that needs to be done to be prepared to reopen. So I don't anticipate Tigard being fully reopened on May 15th, but I am confident that the county is working very hard at making sure that from a public health perspective, we are ready to reopen as soon as possible. And I can also tell you that all the mayors in the region are meeting with the county chair weekly and the public health department director, and are both being informed and asking tough questions to make sure that we reopen as soon as possible. So we have a question about how soon will our county be submitting the necessary info to get approved for reopening? Great question, and one I kind of just covered before the question came in, but the answer is that I don't know exactly what day the county will be submitting the necessary information. It's not just the information. The information also has to indicate that certain requirements are met. So, for example, when I was just talking about the contact tracers, they have to be hired and ready to go and trained, and there's a bunch of other capacity type things. So it's not just submitting the info, it's being ready and having the right answers in that. So that is the first question that's rolled in. Please send me your questions, City of Tigard. Okay, we've got one from Irene. Are renters reaching out to the city for help? Is anyone facing eviction legal process? So both the state and the city have acted to prevent evictions and put a moratorium on evictions for a number of months. And so that is in place now, and I have not heard of a situation where somebody is trying to violate that. But if they were, there would certainly be follow-up and repercussions for folks that are doing that. So as far as renters reaching out to the city for help, we have all kinds of people that have been reaching out for assistance, and we have set up a couple different programs to assist residents. And we've also funded a number of community organizations that have been helping our residents, and they're providing food. We're talking large quantities daily of food and other necessities, and doing a bunch of great work in the community. So Heather is asking, how does the shelter in place impact our local farmers markets set to start opening as soon as Mother's Day? So I actually I saw that the farmers market posted information today, but I haven't read it yet. So I would encourage you to go onto Facebook and look at the Tigard Farmers Market information that they posted. And I am very confident that the staff of the farmers market will have and will continue to keep us updated about that. Irene is asking if there is rental price gouging. I'm not sure what exactly is meant by price gouging in this context. Perhaps you could clarify. Typically, price gouging would be a rapid increase in a price of something, and with rent, that's fixed right now, at least in the state of Oregon. Rental increases are controlled, so there couldn't be a tripling or a quadrupling of anybody's rent. And I think right now landlords are just hoping to get paid any rent. I'm not aware of landlords that are thinking now is a good time to increase people's rent and that they would actually be able to collect that. Let's see, what are the highlights of the proposed budget? Oh, wow, that is a big topic. That could end up being an entire chat itself. Right now, we've got a number of, I think, questions now about the budget, and particularly around whether we need to make some changes due to both potential revenue decreases in certain areas of the budget due to COVID-19, and the budget committee is going to be grappling with that. It actually takes the city team a number of months to prepare the budget and put it to a place where we can work with it. And so some of the work on the budget was done before, or much of it was done before COVID-19 happened. So there's going to have to be some adjustments there. What you'll see in the budget, though, as proposed, is really not a lot of change from last year. We went into the budget cycle trying to, hold the line on spending and move forward with, hopefully, the additional services in the police department, assuming the levy were to pass. Let's see. Will Tigard be putting public improvement projects on hold until you can wrap your arms around the budget? Any ideas on future projects? So, I'm going to assume that question is about doing capital projects, and that will certainly have to be reevaluated in the process. Though our capital, we have hundreds of millions of dollars of work that needs to be done on our capital projects, and we already, fund a very small number of those every year. Certainly, depending on revenue impacts in certain areas, there may be some impacts to the street maintenance that we're able to do. That's one of the annual types of public improvements that we do. Becky, to answer your question specifically, it may very well have an impact. Many of the projects that you might see being done now would have been planned, started, and bid months ago, and so the impacts, if we do have to make changes, it is going to be in future months and not immediately. Let's see. Brett is asking, can you talk a little bit about the city's revenue sources and speculate on how the city's budget for next year may be impacted due to the shutdown and what may have to be cut. So, Brett, I think I covered a little bit of that since you wrote your question, but I'll try to add a little bit to that. The city receives revenue from a variety of places. I think folks probably would expect that. The most challenging area we have is the funding that ends up in the general fund, which comes in large part from property taxes and then smaller pieces from a whole bunch of different areas. The state shares revenue in a couple different areas that come into our budget. There's franchise fees that are collected from organizations that are using Tigard space to provide services like natural gas, electricity. So those are the revenue sources in the general fund for the most part. Those are kind of the big buckets. The other revenue sources for the city include things like the water that everybody pays for on a monthly basis, water, sewer, those types of things. Those generate revenue but they do not end up in the general fund. They cannot be used for general purposes, and they can only be used for the particular enterprise that they're related to. Brett, your question about the impacts from the shutdown, I think I covered that. If you feel like I didn't or you didn't hear it, why don't you comment again, and we will go from there. Andrew, how much do you have in the budget for illegal immigrants? I am not aware of any money in the budget for illegal immigrants. Let's see. Andrew, am I willing to go to jail for aiding and abetting illegal immigrants? I'm not aware of an action or activity that would warrant going to jail, but certainly if I commit a crime, I could end up in jail. Let's see. Chief of Police said yesterday that Tigard has 2,300 small businesses of 10 or less. Have they been coached how to change their target market and find an opportunity for staying open? So the city has partnered with the Tigard Chamber of Commerce to try to help to help businesses that are in the Tigard community and doing everything they can. We've also, as a city, tried to make sure that we're providing as much information as possible to Tigard businesses and to act as a resource to help them get connected. Let's see. Rick, I listened to the governor today. Where does Washington County fall in counties close or ready to open? She seemed to speak about remote Oregon counties. So, Rick, you're seeing that in part. If you look at the data about where COVID-19 infections are, there are entire counties that are shut down that have not had a single person with COVID-19. Not even, we're not talking a death. We're talking like haven't even had a person diagnosed with COVID-19. Those counties are going to be better prepared to open quickly because they're going to need, because of their populations, fewer contact tracers and a bunch of other things that are required. Let's see. Scott, don't respond to that jerk. You're a great mayor. Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. And then David is requesting that we call them undocumented aliens or undocumented immigrants. I think that's fair. I was simply responding to or reading the comment, so I will not attribute that to myself. And then Kareen, Faneuil Creek Trail has been really crowded and hard to keep separate. What planning has been done to provide additional recreational space as the weather continues to improve? Healthy street plans that provide additional space for walking and riding safely on streets seem like a good fit for our city's goal to be the most walkable. How can I support making that a reality? Well, Kareen, thank you for Thank you for asking the question and making a couple of statements there. I think that's a great call out, and one that I would ask our staff to take back to our Parks and Recreation team and others to evaluate what we can do. I think there has absolutely been concern about recreating and recreating safely. The governor has actually provided information. Let me see if I can reference it real quickly about outdoor recreation, and specifically, Kareen, to some of your points about making sure that both restrooms are cleaned a certain way and at a particular manner. And then there were also a number of recommendations about making sure that you, if appropriate, that you direct people to walk in one direction so that they aren't encountering each other, walking directly in each other's face. And so there's, I think, a number of things that can happen there, and I will ask the staff that are here to make sure that the Park and Recreation staff connect back with you, Kareen, and work on addressing that. Brett comments, Tigard has a fantastic group of staff people. Do you foresee any layoffs in the next couple years if we enter a recession, as many economists predict? Brett, I think that's very possible, particularly if certain revenue streams are impacted, which I anticipate that they will be. We certainly may see a downturn in construction and building, and our staff that are involved in both conducting permitting for projects, reviewing, those are all things that are paid for by the projects that are applying to be built in Tigard. So that's an area where we could see some significant change, and where the revenue sources are different, that could be immediately impacted. And then we've already had to lay off I think 20 plus staff in the both seasonal staff and on-call staff, because we just don't need them at this time. Let's see. Irene is commenting. Okay. James, killing of unarmed Black Americans is a huge problem. What has been done to better inform, educate, train our police force and city staff to better help our issues in racism here in the United States? So, James, great question. This is something that's very concerning, I think, to many members of our community and to me. And I know our police chief and our entire police department, frankly. And I watch them provide extremely respectful services. Police work is challenging, but they take the few concerns that we do receive about conduct very seriously. In fact, I had an interaction with a resident yesterday who just called me up on my cell phone. I'd never talked to her before, and within an hour she was talking with the police chief and providing her concerns. Now, this was not about an unarmed Black American, but it was a concern about the conduct and behavior of our officers, and she addressed that. What I can tell you is that I'm very confident that our efforts to further diversify our police force and make sure it's representative of our community, and our focus on making sure that we are doing everything we can to minimize, and I'm going to use the word minimize bias, because I think as I've become more and more educated on the topic, it is impossible for any of us to eliminate all bias. It's just not possible or practical. And so there's huge efforts being done citywide, but it's particularly for the community, it's particularly impactful in the police department. Okay, Andrew is expressing his opinions again. And James, your comment that it's not a problem in the Tigard community currently, that does not mean it couldn't become one, and we need to your point, we need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that. And it is absolutely a social problem that is something we have to keep our eye on, because Otherwise, when you stop watching or tracking something, things start to happen that you don't want. So I absolutely agree with that comment. Kareen, Washington County has centered racial equity in their COVID-19 public health response. How is the city elevating equity issues in the city's response to the virus? So, great question, and one that we are probably the most direct thing that we've taken action on to make sure that it's being done with an equity lens is around the financial assistance to the business community. We wanted to make sure that businesses in Tigard who were underbanked, didn't necessarily have access to the same types of capital resources as larger companies or organizations may have, that are typically more likely to be minority owned, more likely to be woman owned businesses, that we were focusing on making sure that we were helping those entities as best we could, and we focused our program around that, and that was actually extremely successful. Let's see. We have some banter back and forth between folks in the conversation. I'll let that continue. Let's see. I didn't know about the current layoffs. Thank you. Concise answer. Appreciate it. Thank you, Brett. Talk about homeless services and any impacts to those that you're currently aware of. So I have to be honest with you. I have and I think I spoke about this a couple weeks ago in one of my virtual chats as well. I have a couple of homeless individuals who have cell phones that connect and communicate with me, and they are my eyes and ears, beyond my own eyes and ears, about what is exactly going on in the community. And the things that I continue to hear right now that are the most challenging for them, because so many public bathrooms and public places are closed, just going to the restroom is a challenge. Showering has become a much bigger challenge for the homeless and houseless. And those are concerns that are not unique to Tigard, but that is kind of what I'm hearing directly from some of our houseless community members in Tigard. The county has set up and partnered with a couple entities to be providing respite shelters right now, and so the county can help connect homeless folks right now that need shelter. And then if they actually have COVID-19, or they test positive or have symptoms and are presumptively have COVID-19, there's a specific shelter in Washington County that's in Hillsborough that has been set up to specifically care for that population and get them through that time. There have been, I think, up to somewhere between 10 and 15 people that have been in that facility at a time. It's in a particular hotel that has been separated and segregated from doing anything else, and they've got very robust cleaning mechanisms, and the county really had to work hard at that. But that exists as well for homeless folks that are that may have COVID-19 or do. Let's see, Irene, what updates do you have, if any, about Washington Square being curbside food offerings and where listed? I don't know about a specific update about their food offerings specifically from Washington Square. Irene, I will ask staff to follow up with you and get information. I'm certain we can get information about that. So staff are making a note now, and we'll follow up with you about that. Kareen would be interested in knowing how Tigard is partnering with organizations to mitigate impacts on those without homes to shelter in right now. Kareen, I think I just answered that in a prior one, but if you feel like I didn't, please let me know. Let's see. So David's got a shout out to the Somos Tigard Facebook group. Thank you for investing in keeping our Latinx citizens informed. Thank you for that. Corrine, thank you for your compassionate response to helping everyone in our community. Boy, I'm doing my best. I don't know if I hope I'm delivering on that, but that's a tall order, Corrine. Brett, is the city of Tigard currently or planning to provide employer-provided COVID-19 testing for its staff? I know that there are a number of actions that have been taken by the city to make sure that people that are sick or have symptoms are not coming to work, and I believe that there may also be some temperature testing, etc. And that is, I think, the extent of it so far. I think if someone needed COVID-19 testing, they would be directed to the healthcare providers that provide coverage for the city staff. Andrew's making a comment about the First Amendment. I don't quite know what that's in reference to, other than I did not read all of his comments, but you all can. Let's see. We've got we've got a visitor in here, Mr. Van Vlack, who I've not heard from for a couple years, moved out of Summerfield, and he is in Georgetown, Texas right now, and telling us that the restaurants and some businesses have opened. It's been wonderful to see people out enjoying the warm weather. When will Tigard start to open? So, Bob, good to hear from you. I hope you are doing well, and I'm really glad that you've joined in. I provided an update on this a little bit at the beginning, but the governor of Oregon has provided some very specific direction about what counties need to be prepared to do and what they need to have in place, and then the healthcare systems within those counties to be able to safely reopen. And each county is working on doing so. And once that happens, then businesses in Tigard will have the opportunity to change or open further than they are now. We do have curbside service or takeout service at most or many of the restaurants. Most have chosen to, I think, continue operating. And so, there is still commerce that's happening, but it's certainly less than before. Let's see. Becky, what is happening with Universal Plaza? So the last update to the City Council on Universal Plaza was about a month and a half ago, and there is planning work happening. That is certainly the type of project that that project was not already, I should state this more clearly, was already not funded entirely. And it may be more challenging to fund it now. So that would be my comment about Universal Plaza. It may very well be harder to deliver that project in the next couple years given potential revenue impacts. Well, you just barraged me with lots of great questions. That was about close to 30 minutes of straight questions. That's awesome. Keep them coming because we've got more time here, and I want to make sure that we are answering as many of your questions and getting your feedback as much as possible. As a reminder, I want to make sure everybody knows that the census is still out, and if you have not completed the census, please do so. It's both critical for funding from the federal government and representation from the federal government. It's also a legal requirement that you participate, just as a reminder, and also that the information you provide is absolutely privacy protected and was even protected and challenged during the time right after 9/11, and it was still protected through that process. Let's see. So Andrew is saying, sorry, but these are not just my feelings. They are the ones that got President Trump elected. It's about humans that continue to break the law because they can. So certainly, Andrew, there are many hundreds of thousands or millions of people that I know that you're your comments do resonate with. Let's see. Irene, have I heard positives about the police levy? I have. In fact, if you've been participating in social media related to the levy, you would see quite a bit of positive feedback, and lots and lots of people stating that they voted for the levy. I've heard that in the community as we're talking about things too. There's also been some people that are voicing their concerns about the levy and or voicing their opposition to it. What's been interesting is that the opposition doesn't seem to be based on, from what I've seen, it's not based on the fact that what we're planning to do with the money is not worthy or anything else. It's been more feedback like, I'm not going to pay $1 more in taxes ever. Comments like that, and comments about, get Metro out of my pocket and then I'll consider this, or, I vote no on every tax increase. I mean, those are opinions people are certainly welcome to have. We have a pretty specific issue and need in the city, and I think we've done our best to articulate that over the last 2 years to focus the levy and to make sure that it's affordable and makes sense for our community. Let's see. Brett, what is the status of construction on Main Street at Faneuil Creek, the coffee company? So I think you're referring to the Ava Roasteria project, and that project continues. It's a private project that the city owns the land on, and once the project moves forward, the land will be purchased by the developer at market value. That project is still moving forward, but it's in the private entity's hand as far as moving the project forward. And they certainly may be impacted, financing may be impacted by what's going on in the environment. So I don't have more of an update on that, but certainly anything that you need lots of capital for right now is becoming more questionable and harder. Carl is saying that, I think it's Carl, that he's voting yes. Thank you, Carl. That's awesome. Let's see. So for those that weren't on earlier, I want to make sure I remind you to vote. You should have a ballot now if you're a registered voter. You need to make sure that you get your ballot either placed in the mail by May 13th or to a drop box by May 19th. And make sure that, I'd like you to support the levy, but it's even more important that you vote. Steve is asking if any staff are taking pay cuts as other jurisdictions. I have not heard of, beyond the layoffs, I have not heard of other actions that are being taken with our staff right now around pay. The vast majority of our staff are union staff that are in either SEIU, Local 503, or are in our police department in another bargaining unit. And those are certainly much more challenging to change and reduce pay. But that's certainly something that may need to happen as we figure out what all the impacts are. Let's see. Kareen is asking about plans for 72nd, other Tigard Triangle project updates. Most of those are still in, I would say, early planning stages, none of which are, at least the ones that the city would be responsible for, and none of those have funding, including the Southwest Corridor. I mean, that's a huge project that affects the Triangle. The private projects, I've not heard updates on whether the financing of any of those are going to become more problematic. There's two projects on the corridor of 72nd and Dartmouth that we're aware of that I think one's been through a groundbreaking. I haven't heard whether there's an impact to that one. And then the project that's in the northeast corner of that intersection, which is a large housing project, that has not broken ground, and I have not heard if there are impacts from that. Let's see. What is the timeline for 121st Avenue being improved that was supposed to have been done years ago before Kerr overran costs so bad on Walnut and Gardy? So that's actually a county project that's being funded primarily with county resources. And my understanding of that project is that they're in design, actively working on final design, and will be constructing soon. But I don't know the exact date on that. But our staff can follow up with you. Looks like Jeremy Picknell has that question, so staff can follow up with you and get a specific timeline from the county. I also think if you were to go to the county, and I'm not saying you have to do this because our staff will follow up for you, but if you were to go to the county website and look at their road projects, you would find detailed information about the 121st Avenue project. Oh, Brett, early planning stages for the Triangle for 30 years. Yeah, that's probably fair. I think let's talk about the Tigard Triangle for a minute, because in my estimation as mayor, it is the most poorly utilized, underutilized resource and location we have in the city. For people that don't visit the Triangle, there are a number of places where there's quite a view, actually. People don't realize that, but there's quite a view from the elevation change in the Triangle. From a strategic transportation location, it's pretty phenomenal. So I'm responding to Brett's comment about that because I don't get why it's been that way for 30 years, because everything I look at related to the Triangle seems like it was a no-brainer 30 years ago or 20 years ago. Steve is asking about any updates on Main Street, Green Street Phase 2. As far as I know, that project is still moving forward as planned, which I think would be, it's in design now and construction soon. I will ask staff to follow up on specifics for you on that, Steve. Let's see. Andy, any news on when restrooms will reopen on Faneuil Creek? I walk with my walker on the trail. I understand right now that isn't possible because of maintaining them. Just wondering if you have any idea when they might reopen. You love the trail, and there's just nowhere to use the restrooms. I will do my best to answer that. And the governor actually provided guidance today, further guidance today, about outdoor recreation and covered bathrooms. So, Andy, I think that the direction around what needs to happen will continue to help guide us around outdoor recreation and keep getting those facilities open safely. And my hope is that it will be as soon as possible, because I know that Tigard residents love recreating, and I know that they love our trail system. I know they love walking, because I hear all the times in places that we don't have sidewalks that people wish we had, and that they love using the trail system. So, Andy, I understand, and I wish we could make it different immediately, but I hope that with the governor's guidelines to keep us all safe, that we'll be able to reopen them soon. Let's see. Andrew is thanking me. Thank you, Andrew. Let's see. I want to make sure you know about some other upcoming virtual chats as well. Friday, May 8th, which I believe is tomorrow, from 8 to 9 a.m., there will be a council outreach with both Councilor Newton and Council President Goodhouse. Thursday, May 14th, from 6 to 7 p.m., Councilor Newton and Councilor Lube will be doing a council outreach via Facebook Live. And then on Sunday, May 17th, outreach with Councilor Anderson and Council President Goodhouse. I would emphasize that we really want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to answer people's questions, and particularly to answer questions about the levy. We want to be as transparent as we can be. which is fully I mean, we're trying to be fully transparent. I don't know if we always hit the mark, but if we're not, it's not intentional. And part of that is or part of making sure we can do that is making sure that we have venues like this where even during this very challenging time, all of you can still ask questions and hear from us. And then I mentioned earlier the budget committee meeting on May 16th. That meeting starts at 8:30 a.m. That is going to be my longest ever virtual meeting. It is supposed to run all day long. I am concerned about my ability to get through that, but we will get through it. I've suggested to the chair and to the city manager that we have frequent breaks, so we'll see how that goes. Most important thing about that, though, is that we are accepting written testimony about the budget, and we would encourage you to provide that testimony, and your comments will be read and summarized during the budget committee meeting on May 16th. Let's see. Brett, what is the timeline to develop the new park property at Roy Rogers Road and Beef Bend? I've forgotten. Is that the city or county? That is the city property. It is the Lasich property, Brett, that you're referring to. Right now, it is not inside the urban growth boundary. The urban growth boundary goes right up to the property. So until it is included in a future expansion of the urban growth boundary, it's in the urban reserve right now. So it will become property within the urban growth boundary where construction can happen. It can't be developed as a park in the way that in a developed park. Like it could conceivably be used in mostly the condition it's in now, but that's not really appropriate or safe for park use right now. But we are evaluating and hoping that we can work towards getting that, given what we want it to be, that we can work towards getting that in the urban growth boundary in the next few years. Whether we can afford to develop it will also be a future question. Andrew, you are doing the best that you can. Well, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. What other questions? We've got about 10 minutes left. So make sure you get me your questions. If you've got any last hot burning questions, now would be the time. Let's see. Kareen, doesn't the city have other park property within the city that is not currently developed? Off Greenberg, off Bull Mountain, what is happening with park planning more long term? There are a number of park properties that we can't afford to develop right now. So there is there's certainly some planning work, strategic planning work that is done, but detailed plans to develop those various parks are not currently underway. Kareen, what are the city's top priorities in the next 6 months? Passing the local option levy so we can continue to keep Tigard safe. Figuring out what we need to adjust in the budget to address COVID-19. Making sure that when we're doing that we're paying attention to the communities that within the Tigard community that are most at risk and need the most assistance. Administering some of the programs that we've just approved to help residents. We're delaying increases in all of our master fees and charges, utility rates, things like that. Those are the kinds of actions that we're taking. So, Kareen, I think we're going to have to pivot our priorities a little bit based on what happens both to revenue and to our community priorities. Another major priority that I've already talked with a number of downtown business owners about and with the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce is to make sure that as soon as the county has done its work and we're ready to reopen, that we have a broad, coordinated, Tigard is open for business type of campaign that makes sure that absolutely as many people in our community know that we are open for business, or that our business community is completely open. We want to make sure that we are helping to coordinate and lead that effort. It's not ours to do on our own, but we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure that that happens. And that will help make sure that our business community hopefully survives and thrives as best that it can. So if you're just joining us, please submit your questions into the chat box or comments. And if you are also just joining us, make sure you vote. Make sure you fill out your census. One other thing that I want to review real quickly is what we were able to do with our Raft program, which is the Resident Aid Fund of Tigard, which we awarded $100,000 to different community organizations to assist Tigard residents during COVID-19 and the pandemic. We provided $20,000 to Meals on Wheels, $20,000 to Pact with Pride, $6,000 to Community Partners for Affordable Housing, $25,000 to St. Vincent Depaul. That's specifically to provide or to help our residents with utility bills. They're administering that program for us. And then Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, $7,500. Just Compassion of East Washington County, $20,000. And With Love, $1,500. So we are very proud that we've been able to help the various organizations within our community who are really helping in major ways to make sure that Tigard residents that are in need get the assistance that they need to survive and continue right now during this very challenging time. Kareen commented, "Thank you for the Raft update. So impressed with Pact with Pride initiative. They're doing great work." Kareen, I would agree completely with you. That organization didn't even exist 3 months ago. And they have done just phenomenal work providing food to hundreds of people a day. It's just incredible what they've been able to accomplish. So I agree with you, and I'm glad that we were able to help. I think they were shocked by our contribution, but when you consider how much work they're doing and how much food they're providing to families in need in our community, it's phenomenal. Any final questions? I see we got a couple people logging in. Mick, good to see you logged in. I hope you and your family are doing well. If you have any questions, let me know. Veronica, same thing. I see you logged in here at the end. Make sure you get me any last minute questions, because I have personally never tried to run a Facebook Live over an hour, but my understanding is that doesn't work. They cut you off at an hour, whether you want to be or not. Let's see. We got a question from Todd. Will you be partnering with Washington County to provide documentation to meet the governor's requirements to open business? Wife is a hairdresser at Westwood on Main Street and ready to go to work safely too. Do you think we can meet the timeline? So the timeline is as soon as the county, and if the cities need to provide information that supports the county, I can tell you the mayors are all ready to do that. We talk with the county chair every single week for an hour, along with the director of public health. And if that's needed, we'll be there to help. I have not seen criteria that indicate they would need city-specific information, but if they do, we certainly will be there to help. As far as the timeline is as soon as the county, no sooner than May 15th, but as soon as the county can be prepared to fulfill all of its public health and other public safety missions. Let's see. Steve, any financial support for business closed or operating hugely reduced capacity? So, Steve, we had a robust discussion at the council meeting on Tuesday night, and if you did not watch that council meeting, I would encourage you to take a look at that, because we talked about a whole bunch of different opportunities, including, not increasing rates that were scheduled to be increased in July, and then a whole number of things around late fees for alarm permits, all the way to whether there needs to be some sort of business support, or could be business support for some utilities, etc. So take a look at that council meeting, and it happened at the end of the meeting. So if you want to try to focus your time and you don't want to watch the whole meeting, watch the last probably 25 or 30 minutes of that meeting, I would say. Irene, thank you, City of Tigard. Being here now during pandemic isn't pleasant for anyone. Irene, I think we all feel that way. People are just uneasy, unsure, fearful. You hear that from the business community. Steve, who was commenting, is a business owner in downtown. You heard from a member of the community whose wife works downtown. I think everybody is just in a state of unease, and it's unsettling. But we're doing our best to try to provide information and do what we can to help keep people safe. We have a role to play in that, and continue to provide our key services. You definitely need running water during this time. You definitely need that dirty water to be taken away from your house during that time. When you call 911, you need our police to show up. And those are all critical things that we have to do. We're also trying to keep the business community, like the development community, continuing to move forward, though things are slower. It's just harder to do that kind of work when you're trying to do everything from a distance. So we are coming to the end. If anyone has any final question, you should submit it now. Otherwise, I think we're going to be getting cut off by Facebook in under a minute. Thank you all. Happy Mother's Day to all moms in Tigard. And for all the non-moms that weren't thinking about that, I'm helping you out. Let's see, did we get any other final questions? I don't see any. So, Tigard, thank you for listening and tuning in. Have a great evening, and good night.